Hello, party people. We are LIVE today on this Friday. What is going on? I'm Andrew. This is Lorna, and we're going to be doing another episode of Reflection with the Costas. I promise we'll get this right as
Can you turn that
as
light
we
off
go through.
because it's
So,
in my glasses.
oh yes, absolutely. I can turn the light off. There we go. Look at that. All right. We're going to be talking about success today. I think you and I have had a lot of conversations over the past week on growth, where we want to grow, really talking about, and we'll share some kind of internal light. I mean, obviously, having a little one, 6 months old, each of us with our own separate businesses. And then we're also trying to maintain friendships, and we have different friend groups that we're a part of. And all of these things take a lot of time. And so there's conversations on where can we continue to grow in different areas of our life, and what is the definition of success and growth for us now? Because I think in different seasons of our lives, we get into this place where we start, whether it's looking externally at what other people are doing, or maybe reassessing some of the goals and some of the things we're working towards. And it's like, oh man, it can be easy to fall into this trap of like, well, like I don't feel as successful as I have been in other years, or I don't feel like I'm growing as fast as I know that I could be. So I think like a great space to open up is really just sharing with them the conversations we've been having alongside our businesses, right? I'll share kind of for me, and then you can share. I think for me, having Dominus as our little one, I kind of went into it knowing like there's going to be a lot of time that's taken. I'm the type of person like you where it's like, if I had 10 hours, I would probably spend all 10 hours on my business. It's very easy for you and I to not get lost in the work necessarily, but basically to just continuously do it because we love it. And now that we have a limited amount of time, I'm finding that kind of dichotomy and that energy of like, I want to spend more time doing these things and wanting to grow, but we also have to be realistic. I'm not prepared to go until 2 a.m. every single night to make sure that these things are happening in order to stay at the same speed of growth that I've been doing. So you and I have had a lot of conversations, especially because I'm working one-on-one with clients, where it's like, realistically, if I was to look at how many people I could work with before my time is capped, there is a cap in terms of time, right? Versus the way you run your program being a group model. But I've come to realize like it doesn't really matter how necessarily we build our business, but it's really about, with the time that we have, what does that growth and what does that success look like?
Yeah.
Right? How have you been feeling through the process?
Well, it's so interesting. Like, the other day you asked me, well, what did you do all day? Right. And I remember like just being like, oh, I still have to like, write this presentation for tomorrow. And you're like, well, what did you do all day? And then I was like, well, I was doing this and I had this and I had to do this. And it was a lot of maintenance, a lot of like things that you have to do on a regular basis versus doing like a needle mover project that actually, progresses you forward. And for even people listening who don't have businesses, it's like, you have to do laundry, you gotta cook, you gotta clean, like all the regular schmegular things that you have to do on a daily basis. And it's like, you have to still do those things on top of doing the things that are actually going to grow your business. But I think I had a realization where it's like, it feels good working on something. It feels good. Maybe you're looking up what running shoes that you need to buy so you can start running again, or listening to a podcast on how to grow your business. And it feels like you're doing the work. It feels like you're working, but are you actually? And I think for me, I had this realization that like, I have to like really sit down and be like, what are the things that are actually driving the business forward? Because like I can post 3, 4, 5 times on social media, but it's like, is that what I need to be doing? Or is it like, one very, very, very intentional post that's actually going to drive the business forward? And so I think when it comes to this conversation of, success and all these things, it's also really asking yourself, like, what are you doing in that time? It's like, what are you actually filling up that time with? Because sometimes it can feel like things aren't working, or I'm not growing, but it might just be that, like, you're putting in so much energy and effort towards something that you feel would be supportive, but it's like not the right type of action. So then it always feels like, but I'm not getting there. I'm not getting there. I'm not getting there. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I think you and I have no problem doing. I
Yeah.
think the do comes very easy, and you'll find people, and maybe you or who are watching this are on the polar opposite spectrum, where maybe you're saying to yourself, well, like, I have a really hard time doing. Like, I don't
Mhm.
have an issue, thinking and imagining
Yeah.
and dream building and all this stuff. When it actually comes to like put something together, like, good luck, right?
Mhm.
We're kind of on the opposite end of that, which is like the action, the do, the implementation
Yeah.
we have no issue with, but sometimes it can feel almost unproductive to
Yeah.
take a step back and then be like, okay, now we're going to dream build, and what does our life look like, and what is this? And there needs to be kind of a fine balance of both, because if we don't sit down and allow that space to create,
Yeah.
then we're always creating from a place of struggle, and then that's where like you're manifesting things that you don't want, or things are like the same problem or challenge keeps happening over and over again,
Mhm.
and you're like, well, what the heck? Well, like, why isn't this working the way that I thought it would work,
Yeah.
right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That just means, again, like, the things that you are focusing on, what you focus on consciously or subconsciously, is the very thing that is expanding.
Yeah.
So if you keep finding things in your life that are manifesting over and over again, it's because you're putting them there,
Yeah.
and that's a big thing. I think for me, when it comes to success, I used to, and it's hard to get out of this trap, because sometimes I still find myself in it, where you're looking at your definition of success and you're looking at your definition of growth, and it's a very linear thing. So for like business owners, we're like, well, if my business is not growing, then like I'm not growing as a person, because that's basically the primary focus.
Mhm.
But it was actually my men's group who reminded me, like, well, it's not just business that's growing. You're also growing as a father. You're also growing in your relationship. You're
Yep.
also like, there are other things that I'm growing in every single day.
Yep.
And so if I were to only focus on, well, what is this one area of growth? What does this one area of success look like?
Mhm.
Of course, if you're not seeing a change, or if you're just seeing maintenance in that area, it can be easy for you to be like, well, I'm not being successful.
Yeah.
But the question was put to me in the men's group, which is like, well, if let's say you took another 15 clients on like you want, and all of a sudden you have no time for your family, well, would you deem that as success? Like, would that be success for you? And I was like, no, because I want family first, and I want to be able to be present for everything.
Yeah.
And especially for men, and I would love your thoughts on, obviously, for women. I find that men are very career driven, very logical, very, I'm going to focus on one thing, that thing's going to be the growth, and then you start to forget about the other areas of your
Mm.
life. And so for me, I followed a lot of people who are some pretty reputable mentors, but it's like, oh, they look like they have all of the money, so that must be what success is. And it's like, well, when you look at their life, they're divorced, they don't have connections with their kids, there's like they don't have a lot of family time, because they're fully obsessed in business. And so I've really sat down and I've asked myself, well, what does the definition of success look like to me? And the definition of success is like, yes, finances matter, but I want to be 100% present with my family. I want to make sure that I'm available for like all the soccer games or the future, whatever Dominus plays in terms of sports. Like, I want to be there. I want to be there for my family and spend time with your parents, with my parents.
Mhm.
And I want to be present for all of this stuff, because that's important to me, alongside growing my business, growing my relationships with my friends, and living a fulfilled life. Like, that for me is a definition of success.
Yeah.
I don't want it to come at the cost of our relationship. I
Yeah.
don't want it to come at the cost of our family,
Mhm.
just for the sake of having more money. Because I can't tell you, like, we have never had an issue generating income. We've always had income, and that is something that we've done the work for, to be able to generate it consistently. So there's no indication or no reason as to why we should believe anything different. that we're not going to keep getting paid, that we're not going to keep continuing to grow and to build. And so the question becomes like, well, if you're saying that as the definition of success, are you actually operating like that is success? So if your business is in maintenance mode because you've got a new kid and you're trying to figure out your schedule and you don't have a lot of time, do you still feel successful, or are you at the effect and you're now letting that negative energy creep back in and be like, well, you're not growing, you're not doing this, right? And yeah, I find for guys, it can be very easy to do like a very singular focus, but I'm curious as to what your thoughts are.
My thoughts were actually, in my opinion, a lot of the women that I work with is they don't focus on one thing. They focus on 800 things. And then it feels like I'm not being successful because I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to, my energy is spread everywhere, that it doesn't feel like one area is progressing forward. But again, this all really comes down to like what the values are, because like, you know, we obviously say like our business is like, sometimes I say it's like the most important thing, obviously our family, but like it's the most important thing, right? But really, when we strip away everything, it's like, you know, there's a reason why we're not working until 2 a.m. There's a reason why we still also go out and we have fun, because we don't just value our business, we also value our health. Like, you know, we're not going to do something that, you know, you see these successful people, $1 million, $1 billion, like whatever it is. And it's like, but they don't have their health, you know? And it's like, I will refuse to like not go on my walks, or like to not, you know, go to my yoga class because I want to do one more thing for my business. Like, you know, so I also think too, it's like, I'm just looking at that thing in number 4. It says, don't compare.
Oh,
and
I love it.
And it's just like, you know, sometimes it's really easy to get trapped in that cycle of like, oh, look at this person, like their business is thriving, but again, they don't have kids, or like they don't value family, like they literally don't spend time with their family.
Yep, very true.
And that's fine, but again, like what's the values? Like, what are your values? And this is why like comparing yourself to someone who doesn't have the same values as you there's literally no point. Because someone who is just focused on, let's say someone's just focused on their business and they don't care about their health. Well, yeah, they're probably gonna have a thriving business and shitty health. Or someone who's just focused on their health, they're in the gym 8 days a week, like, you know, 3 hours a day, and they don't have a business and they can spend 3 hours a day. And sure, they look fantastic or whatever it is, but it's like, do you want to be doing that? You know? So it's like, what's the bigger picture? And, you know, I think something that's so interesting is whenever you bring up something of, you know, I want to grow, I always bring you back down to earth. And I'm like, well, listen, like we have everything, like our family is what matters the most. But then I'm like, but I want to grow. And then you'll remind me and I'm like, yeah, but like, you don't get it. You know, I think it's so easy, right? Because it's like, we do need to like come back to, you know, center, whatever. And it's really easy, I think, for us to tell other people like, but this is what matters and all those things. But then for you to actually like let that land in your body, sometimes it's different.
Yeah. And I think this also like opens and introduces the conversation to like, what is your definition of growth? And so when people tie growth to progress, and people think that progress always has to be forward. So whenever we're looking at like, what is your definition of growth? People will use the word more, right? More clients, more revenue, more time with family. That's not the only definition of growth, right? And there was a great example that I heard recently, which is like, you know, everybody in their life has their own rock, you know, and that is the thing that people are basically actively like trying to push uphill to whatever their goal or their destination is. The steepness of the hill is whatever challenge you're choosing, but we're always pushing and heads down, and it's struggle, and we never let it go, and the rock gets heavier, and it could be 6 years, could be 10 years, and we're pushing, and there's so much pressure. And then it's like, for us to achieve the highest level of self that we can be, for us to be that person who feels ultimately fulfilled, like sometimes we have to recognize Like, number one, is this our rock, or did we choose someone else's rock?
Mm.
You know, and we're trying really hard, and that rock isn't ours. The second thing is that the only way to get up the hill? Like, we really have to be the one to push? We have to push on our own. We can't have the help from friends or people. We have to push it up tomorrow. There's all these expectations that dictate whether or not we sacrifice. And then the other thing is well, how far are you willing to prepare this to have this rock, and what is the direction of success? So when we look at more, because we equate to more being better, more is up. There's a lot of resistance with more because you have to do more, you have to take more time, more energy. There's more. Lauren and I have discovered there is a cap on more. Like, we don't have more time. We need to be intentional with our time now. We don't have more energy. We're not prepared to go to bed at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. for us to continue to do this, right? So when we look at more no longer existing, this is where we have to define, where are we pushing this rock to? Are we pushing it to an unsustainable place in which it's like, look, up there requires 16-hour days, no friends, no family in this. I don't want that type of more. And so there is another direction which the rock can go, which is down the hill, which is literally like, can you let all those expectations go and watch that rock roll away from you and possibly break away every obstacle or everything that you set up using that momentum, you know? And hearing that as an example really made me realize, like, my definition of growth for a long time has always been me having to hustle and input more. And it was a mentor of mine who was like, look, it's the answer is not more, because at some point there's a ceiling to that. This is where now you actually have to start looking, saying, you know, am I creating things intentionally? You know,
Right, yeah.
Lorna and I love to take on multiple things in the business, you know, and there's a part like even the book. I put the book on hold because I said right now it doesn't make sense because I don't have the capacity. If I'm doing it, I would do it literally to just push it past the finish line. And that's not the intention behind it. And people might be like, oh, you stopped. I guess you're not going to do that. Not right now. I might revisit it in a year, might revisit it in 6 months, maybe 3 years. But the reality is like, looking towards what I want to do and what I value, growth does not equate having that in the picture right now. And me being more intentional about it has really then said to myself, like, wow, I actually need to spend time doing less, actually being present, in order for me to think about, well, what do I value in the season that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think, you know, definitions of success should look different year after year, even month after month. And for me, it's like I focus on feeling, because when I think back to like the times that I've been quote unquote like the most successful, it felt easy. Like, it didn't feel like I was pushing the rock up. It was like I felt like I was like running down a hill. It was like free and flow and ease and joy and things like that. And so, you know, what have you been conditioned to believe like you have to be doing in order to be successful? Like with anything, like go on a diet, it has to be like the hardest thing ever. Build a business. If you're not like killing yourself, like, you know, it's like you get to create your own definition of success, and it can change from when you first started to now, or even like just having a different perspective. Like, my favorite thing to do is like, if I currently feel like this is how it's supposed to be and I don't like that, how can I make it different? So for example, it's like I don't like, you know, some people will be like, "Oh, once you have kids, you're not going to be successful in your business." Well, I don't want to believe that. So like,
Yeah.
what if like we serve the most amount of clients while having a baby? You know, it's like, what if you're the healthiest, happiest, fittest while having a baby? Like, you get to choose what that looks like, what that feels like, and not giving into other people's definition of success. What you've been told in the past, like that can just be like so toxic, because then it almost feels like you're doing something wrong if it feels easy and you're building your business, or it feels really good and you're, getting in really good shape, it's like, wait, am I doing it wrong? Like I don't think this is right. And it's like, no, just because you've been conditioned to believe somebody else's definition of success or like their path of like how you're supposed to get there. But you can do it however you want. Like it gets to be fun and flow and like easy.
And I think that's really where you always say to me, like, we can have it all. So like where can we look and say to ourselves, like, where do we feel like we're missing something? But there is something as well too when we're looking to create success, which we were talking about in lunch before we hopped on. Like whatever's manifesting in your world externally, like whatever you're seeing, it's a reflection of what is happening internally in you. So whenever you're setting something and you're like, well, we can have the clients and we can have the growth. Well, that reflection, the polar opposite is how you're feeling internally. So it's, I don't have the growth, I don't have the clients. And it's the same thing with fulfillment. There's like a fulfillment trap where like so many people our age, they don't feel fulfilled. And it's like, well, you can choose fulfillment in something, but if you're saying out there, right, I want to find something with fulfillment, I want to be fulfilled in my job, I want to feel this, what's being reflected internally is that you believe that these things do not have fulfillment attached to them, that there is nothing as to what you are doing right now that is keeping you fulfilled. And you have to ask yourself, is that story true? And I think there are so many subtle stories and there are very loud stories. It's easy to see the loud story, right? Like,
it's right there.
I really want to make a ton of money. And you're like, well, if you look, you've always had money. So like, that's a very loud story. So like, it's easy to break those ones down, but there's a lot of subtle stories, where like we can tell ourselves we're doing it for the benefit of others, or we're doing it because we feel like it's something exciting, but deep down it's because we want it or we feel that we need it in order for these things like fulfillment, success, growth to be present. And I think it can be really exhausting. You know what I mean? Always doing something like working towards growth, working towards thing, simply because you don't realize you are growing every day, like whether you believe it or not.
I was also going to say, like, what was I going to say? Sometimes if you don't have a good why, or like you're not doing things with the right intention, it's like, that's literally why you don't have that thing. It's like, because like you can get the body, you can get the business, but if it's for the wrong reason, it's like life, God, source, whatever, it's not going to give you that, because it's like, it's not good for you. Like it's not good for you to be able to do that. Like you build your business to $100,000 cash month, but like you did that and you're like, I feel validated. Like, like I'm validated. And it's like, that's not why you should be doing it. So it's like the next month you go back to like 2K, you know what I mean? Because it's like, well, that's unhealthy. If you just keep on wanting to get validation, like I'm not going to give you that to teach you that, like, you have to be willing to validate yourself before having other people validate you. Like there's always a reason. And we talk about this all the time. Like there's always a reason, and there's always a lesson. There's always a reason. There's always like things that you'll have to sit down and look at and work through in order to get to that next level. And like, that's the do. If you're a doer, guess what? There's always going to be things that you can do, because like the doing sometimes is like, hold on, let me like rethink this. And like, that's still like, you still got to be doing something, So
absolutely. When you were talking about that stuff, I think sometimes there's a question there, right? How do I know if I'm doing something for others versus I'm doing something for myself, right? Because there's that, like, you're saying, oh, it's for other people or it's this, but it's not really, it's actually for you type of thing. I wanted to say a couple things to that. Number one, doing something for yourself is not a bad thing, right? Because we cannot pour from an empty cup. We have to do things that get us excited. That being said, Lorna and I had a great conversation about everything being able to be in a win-win-win scenario, where I genuinely believe that you can win, people can win, and the entire like scenario can be a win-win for everybody. You just have to be honest with what it is. And this is the definition, the difference, sorry, between something being selfish versus being selfless. You can still do something for you, but a selfish thing, and it's actually in the word, is the ish. I say I'm doing it for someone else ish, kind of, because really I'm doing it for myself. That's selfish. That's like you're building the relationship with that person, but actually what you're doing is you're looking for the relationship so you can get connected to somebody else. That's selfish, right? You're putting an offer out there on your business, but in reality, the offer is just for you to make some upfront cash, and it's actually not going to get people the full result. That's selfish, right? You're spending time with family, but it's really because you have a sense of guilt because you're like, well, if I don't do it, I'm going to look like an ass, so I'm going to spend time with family. That's selfish because you say it's for someone else ish, it's really for you. Like that's the big thing.
Right.
Versus being selfless. Selfless, like I always think about the core values that I do for BNI. That's 100% for me. I love teaching and educating people. And I know when I fill my cup and I get to just show up and present and come from a place of care, I know that once my cup is full, I need less. And that's the whole part of selfless. I need less of something from me. I don't need the referral from most people. I don't need the thank you for closed business. I don't need the validation because my cup is full.
Yeah.
So a selfless thing is when you take the time to fill yourself up first, everything else that you do requires less for you. I'm not trying to like you, right? Like how many offers have you put out there that you're like, honestly, I'm doing this because I want to serve some people.
Yeah.
I don't really care if it generates any income or any revenue or whatever, right? Or how many times have we gone out with friends and we're like, oh, I'm not looking for this to take me to the next level. Like I'm looking to just enjoy people's company. We can be present because we already have our cups filled, and this is going back to like, for us, what is filling our cup every day,
Yeah. 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 And if literally like, all you really focused on was filling up your own cup, you would have success because like you're doing things that you enjoy. Like when I think about like filling my own cup, like I'm going to do the things that make me happy. Right. So it's like, whatever, go to my yoga class, cuddles with Dominus, go for my walk, do my thing. That's what makes you happy. Like you're going to have fulfillment. Right. And it's like, so if you just really focus on like filling up your own cup, it's going to be really hard to not feel fulfilled. But again, it comes down to like, oh, but like this isn't growing, or like, but I'm not successful in here. But you're, if filling up your own cup was doing only that one thing, then it would be different. Like, so just focusing on like what actually really matters.
For sure. And that's really the question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny that like that's almost what we're going to end on, but you have to ask yourself what actually really matters. So if you don't like the number in your bank account, right? Is that what matters? Like, is that the thing? Like, you're on your deathbed and you're like, oh man, I wish there was one extra zero, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's an exaggerate, but it's the same. Like, let's say, you're spending time with your family and you're like, oh man, like I really wish like grandma was here, right? Like what actually really matters? You have to ask yourself that more frequently.
Well, actually, I was talking to a client yesterday and she's a stay-at-home mom and she was talking to a bunch of other moms. And I guess like this person has 4 kids, and then she was talking to somebody else who has 4 kids, and supposedly this other mom was like, yeah, I make my own bread from scratch and I do all these things. And then like, my client was like, wait, what am I doing wrong? Because I don't do that. And I also have 4 kids. So like, what is she doing? Like, I'm not doing it. I'm like, but is that of a value to you? Or do you, value maybe, doing the kids laundry, or like cleaning your house, or like going in for your walks, or like getting on coaching calls with us? Like maybe, somebody else is not doing personal development and they're cooking all day. Like, so it's just like, again, like, is that of a value to you? Does that matter to you? It's really easy to compare and be like, oh my gosh, she's doing all these things. But it's like, if that was important for you, you would also be doing it. But there's a reason why you're not doing it. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because there's something freaking wrong with you. It's like, it's not important.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where, like, the less we can compare and the less we
Yeah.
can look towards, the neighbor's rock and be like, oh man, his is polished and shiny and it's great. And like, look at it sitting on the top of the hill. It looks awesome. And it's like, you don't understand that process, that like what had to happen, what was
Yeah.
sacrificed in order for that to happen,
Yep.
And we all have our own journey. We all get to choose our own rock,
Yeah.
and we don't have to have a heavy rock. We could have one the size of our freaking palm, and we carry it in our pocket, and our life is very seamless and it's effortless, and like we can move through it in flow. But we ultimately have to be the ones to decide that,
Yeah.
Because, and I'll say this, before we go to end the episode,
Yeah.
like, as someone who's, this is not the first career for me. It's not the career. Like, it's not. And if you think it's your business, it's not your business. And if you think it's your relationship, it's not your relationship. Like, it's always one thing and you go, oh, I would be happy if this thing changed. No, you wouldn't. Right? All of that it's another condition we put to prevent us from operating as the best person we can be.
Yep.
I would only be happy if, and then it's like, well, no, just remove that and say, I can be happy now.
Yeah.
And choose that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as you choose it every day, the thing that you want, like, it's inevitably gonna come to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so backwards. Instead of like chasing, it's like you just focus on being happy, and then the thing that you want actually just like comes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard because people can't control that. Right? Like, when you effort something, you can control how much effort you give.
Yeah.
And so when people think things aren't happening, they're like, well, I just need to control more. And so I'm going to just do more and put more effort. But like, the universe doesn't, or the world doesn't operate like that. Like, if you just sat on the lazy river and were going downstream and had both hands open, something would like fly into your hand and you'd be like, oh, this is it. Like, it doesn't actually have to be hard.
Yeah.
But that requires a lot of patience,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be looking like, when Lorna and I are always talking about growth, it's not from the state of lack or negativity. Like, we genuinely believe that we are capable of more and that we deserve more, and that when we're looking to take these things on, it should be from a place of excitement, And even sometimes Lorna and I like have to, take a step back and remind ourselves like, whoa, okay, wait a second. Are we going into too much due? Are we trying to force the outcome? Because we're on this planet for such a short time. Mm-hmm. We want to have a meaningful family. We want to have this meaningful relationship, right? And all of it is for us. So it's always redefining that. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much, and gals, for watching another episode of Reflections with the Costas. We're on every Friday. Join us live, or if you watch the recording, like, drop your biggest share down below, because we want to know what are you hearing from this? What are you getting from the episodes? What is kind of coming up for you as we're talking? All of that stuff is great stuff. And if you want to be a part of the conversation live, join us live. You can literally directly chat and like have a full-blown conversation. That's why we're choosing to do it on YouTube and operate live, because we want everyone to be a part of the conversation. So other than that, that is all for this Friday. That's what I will say. You guys enjoy the rest of the day, and then Lorna and I will catch you next week. Yeah. Bye, folks. See ya.